We begin, though, this morning with Casey Anthony's murder trial, the case that is riveting much of the nation, expected to go to the jury later today. Sunday's closing arguments were just as dramatic as the rest of the trial. 48 Hours mystery correspondent Troy Roberts is outside the courthouse in Orlando with the very latest. Troy, good morning.
Good morning, Erica. The lead prosecutor and defense attorneys in this case have been at each other's throats throughout much of the trial. Judge Belvin Perry has admonished them many times, calling for civility, but yesterday, emotions got the best of everyone.
She chose to sacrifice her child to live the life that she wanted.
Prosecutor Jeff Ashton minced few words in his closing argument that at times brought 25-year-old Casey Anthony to tears.
And screaming, "This is your fault."
Ashton detailed what he called Anthony's repeated lies on the whereabouts of her daughter Kaylee, who had been missing for a month in the summer of 2008.
She's very smart, and her lies are very detailed. But what you find throughout this case is this persistent pattern. When Casey wants to do what Casey wants to do, Casey finds a way.
Kaylee's remains were found a few months later, walking distance from the Anthony home. Ashton told jurors Casey Anthony killed her daughter with chloroform and duct tape, saying Casey was tired of being a mom to 2-year-old Kaylee, who would soon interrupt her love life.
And she died because she could not breathe. She died because she had 3 pieces of duct tape over her nose and mouth, and she died because her mother decided that the life that she wanted was more important. This murder was premeditated, and the defendant is guilty.
This is something that just doesn't add up.
Defense attorney Jose Baez pleaded with the jury to spare his client from a conviction that could lead to her execution.
And no real hard evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, nothing. But she's a liar and a slut. Convict her on that.
Baez made an emotional and dramatic case to jurors, aimed at raising reasonable doubt.
Why? Because you want to go party? They want to give you the who without the where, the how, or the why.
The defense reiterated its theory that Kaylee accidentally drowned in the family's backyard pool. And they said that Casey's father, George Anthony, helped cover it up, claiming that the prosecution can't prove otherwise.
If you don't know what happened, that's it. If it wasn't proven to you that it happened, that's it. It's over. It's not guilty on every count.
Baez's emotions ran over after he referred to the prosecution's evidence as fantasy forensics. Those words brought a smile to prosecutor Jeff Ashton.
But the truth is the truth, and depending on who's asking the questions, whether it's this laughing guy right here or whether it's myself.
Objection. Approach the bench.
Judge Belvin Perry had enough.
I assume that you are all professionals.
Baez and John Ashton eventually apologized. We'll see if that truce holds this morning during the prosecution's final rebuttal. Erica?
Troy, thanks. Troy Roberts in Orlando this morning. Here with us in the studio now is legal expert and criminologist Casey Jordan. And you've been covering this, watching it very closely. Good to have you with us. That last bit at the end that we just saw from Troy, the judge admonishing both attorneys. I mean, that really is sort of a metaphor for this case and how wild it's been.
It really is. And we did expect some fireworks, but not in a little sandbox squabble between the lead attorneys in the case. And in the end, Jose Baez did break one of the rules and got called out. Big meeting in chambers, came out, apologized, things moved forward, but I think it may have thrown him off his game and interrupted the flow of his closing arguments. And the closing arguments are what are supposed to be fireworks.
But they were equally. You know, I mean, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Now, let's start with the prosecution, because really the burden is on the prosecution.
That's right.
Here, the defense, he said very clearly, look, they didn't have any evidence. They didn't show you any evidence. Did the prosecution do its job here?
I was impressed. Yes, Jeff Ashton, lead prosecutor, he really has a gift of delivery, and he pulled some stuff out that really made your spine tingle. He talked about how Casey Anthony's password was timer 55, and that was 55 days from the time of Kaylee's death to her birthday, where she she wouldn't be able to come up with an excuse of where her daughter was on her birthday party. He talked about Casey 3.0, like she has the 3 faces of Eve and the different stages her personality went through. Really about the partying. He finally really hammered about the motive, which they had really ignored because it's not an element of murder. But he painted a picture of this party girl who could not have the life of independence that she wanted as long as her daughter was in the way. And I think he was extremely effective with that. And then he went through the forensics and methodically laid it out. Highly effective closing.
Highly effective. What about the defense, especially from what we've heard so far? As I mentioned, he said, look, the prosecution, in his view, did not have any evidence. But he also really tried to hammer home the point that as a juror, you can't rely on your emotions here when you're making a decision, which is interesting since clearly both sides are trying to play up the emotion.
Absolutely. And yes, Jose Baez methodically walked through what he believed the fantasy forensics were. He kept saying it didn't add up. There were problems with this, problems with that. He was a little bit disorganized, but Cheney Mason tried to bring it all together at the end and simply hammered on the idea that if you can envision an accident, and remember, he says that the biggest gorilla in the room is that Casey didn't take the stand. But the truth is, the biggest gorilla in the room was that what they presented didn't match their opening statement. So what he ended up doing was simply reminding the jury, if you can envision an accident, any kind of accident, if they did not rise to a level of murder, then you must vote not guilty. He really simply said, if you have any question in your mind, then you have a doubt, and that doubt equals not guilty, which was effective.
So when do you think we'll actually hear either a guilty or a not guilty?
It could be. If this is a lightning-fast jury, we have seen them come back in a number of hours, but I wouldn't like that because it would show that they probably had a rush to judgment because they wanted to get out of there. We see that with sequestered juries. I think it could come back as early as close of business tomorrow, Tuesday, and I definitely think that you'll have it by Friday, 4 o'clock, because nobody wants to go and spend another weekend after this many weeks.
Really quickly, speaking of the weekends, how unusual is it to have a trial on the weekends and now on the 4th of July?
Extremely unusual, but don't forget, this is a jury that wanted to work on Memorial Day. 6 weeks of sequestration is a lot for them. And for Judge Perry, under Judge Perry, the trains run on time. He wants this thing over with. For him to pull people in on Sundays on a holiday of 4th of July shows he means business. I think the jury will rise to the occasion, be businesslike, and come back with a quick verdict.
Casey Jordan, great to have you here. Thank you.
Always great to be here.